We continue now at the top of Daf Pei Bezam and Bezam Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 82b. The Gemara continues, Makom Shihei Mishulash B'dam B'basar Be'imurim. This was explained by Rashi on the previous Amud, but the Gemara here is saying that only a place which is Mishulash, which is threefold, meaning Dam, Basar, and Imurim, it applies with blood, with meat, and sacrificial portions, only that kind of place. And as Rashi explained in the previous Amud, that is referring to outside of the Azara, a machshava, an intention, a disqualifying intention of outside the Azara, that creates a disqualification. However, a disqualifying intention to do it in the wrong place in the Heichol, that does not create that disqualification. And the Gemara continues and asks, Velote machshava poselas bachutz. We should say that machshava, again, a wrong intention outside the Azara, should not disqualify. Mikal v'chomer, from the following kal v'chomer. Umam mokom shepasal dam shebifnim es shebachutz. If in a situation where we say, again, if some of the blood is brought inside the Heichol, it disqualifies the blood that is outside the Heichol, that's in the Azara, but ein machshava poselas bifnim. But we say again that a disqualifying intention inside the Heichol, an intention, again, you're going to bring the blood inside the Heichel, does not disqualify. That kind of inside intention does not disqualify. So makom shelo pasal dam shebechutz es shebifnim. So again, we said in the previous Amud that if you have an area where if some of the blood is brought outside the Azara, that does not disqualify the blood in the Azara. So eino din shelo yeh posal machshava bechutz. So doesn't it make sense to say that the intention for outside the Azara should not disqualify? And the Gemara says, no, that's a pasuk. Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says shalishi chutz lizmano pigol chutz lemekomo. When it says shalishi in the pasuk, that refers to chutz lizmano. That's an intention outside of the proper time. And when it says in the pasuk pigol, that is referring to an intention outside of the proper place. And so that's how we know, again, machshava outside of the Azara, that kind of an intention is going to disqualify. And the Gemara continues, basar hayotze lachutz pasal. If you have meat that goes outside the Azara or outside of the proper place in terms of wherever the meat is supposed to be, then we say it's disqualified. But hanichnas lifnim, but let's say the meat goes into the heichol, kosher, it's still kosher. Shehei bedin, because it could have been logical as follows. Shehei bedin shapasal, we could have argued that it's disqualified as follows. Uma b'mokom shelo pasal dam shebechutz es shebifnim. If we say that in a place where the blood brought outside doesn't disqualify the blood that's still in the Azara, but basar hayotze lachutz pasal, but if the meat goes outside of the proper place, let's say outside of the Azara, so then it's disqualified. So makom shepasal dam shebifnim es shebechutz, if you have a place where, again, we said that the blood brought inside the heichel can disqualify the blood that remained outside the heichel that was in the Azara, basar hanichnas bifnim, so if you have meat that enters the heichel, eino din sheyifsol, we should be strict and we should say that it's disqualified. But harehu omer, but the pasuk says midama, from the blood, dama, bringing the blood in the heichel is a disqualification. V'lo basar, that does not apply to the meat. And the Gemara continues, kal v'chomer me'ata, we can make the following kal v'chomer now. Uma b'mokom shepasal dam shebifnim es shebechutz, if in a situation where, again, the blood brought inside the heichel can disqualify the blood outside the heichel that's in the Azara, basar hanichnas lifnim kosher, but the meat that goes inside is kosher. So mokom shelo pasal dam shebechutz es shebifnim, in a place where the blood brought outside the Azara does not disqualify the remaining blood inside the Azara. So basar hayotze lachutz, so if the meat goes outside of the Azara, eino din shekosher, wouldn't it be logical to say that that is kosher? Harehu omer, the pasuk says, uvasar basad treifa lo sochelu. It says basad treifa lo sochelu. We learn from that pasuk that kevan sheyotza basar chutz lemechitzaso, once the meat leaves the mechitza, leaves its proper area, so then nesar, then it is prohibited. And Rashi explains, basada, again, it says in the field, below mechitzos mashma, that implies that there's no mechitzos. V'darish lei l'chol habasar shaton mechitza. The drush of the Gemara is that any meat that does have a mechitza, any meat that has to be eaten within a certain area, by kachei kachim, that would be within the Azara, by kachim kalim, that would be within Yerushalayim, treifahu bayotze, so if it leaves the proper area, then we're going to say it's disqualified, v'lo sochal, and it shouldn't be eaten. V'dam hayotze kal v'chomer mi basar asi, and in terms of blood that leaves the proper area, that's a kal v'chomer from meat. V'od nafgalan, and we can also learn that out from Hein lohuva es dama la kodesh penima, from the pasuk of Hein lohuva es dama. Amar lohen, he said to them, Shema hechnastem lifnim. He said maybe the blood was brought inside. Amar le Hein lohuva es dama la kodesh. They said it wasn't brought inside. Shema chutz lemechitza so yatzta. Maybe it went outside the mechitza. Amru lo pnima, so they said no, it was inside. Hachi darshinan leila kamon beperak tvul yom. That's how they darshan this pasuk later on. And the Gemara continues. continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Penima, the pasuk says Penima. This is the same pasuk that was mentioned above. Again, the full pasuk, Moshe is talking to Aaron. He wants to know why the chatos wasn't eaten. And he says, Hein lo huva es dama la kodesh Penima. The blood wasn't brought inside, so it should have been eaten. Achol tochlu osa ba kodesh kasher tzivesi, so it should have been eaten. And again, that pasuk teaches us that if it was brought inside, if the blood was brought inside, then there's a disqualification. And so the Brisa says again, it says Penima, Ein li ela Penima, I only know Penima, meaning I only know if it's brought in the Kodesh Kadashim, there's a disqualification. But Heichel Minayin, from where do we know if the blood is brought into the Heichel, into the Kodesh? That's also a disqualification. Talmud Lomer El HaKodesh Penima, the Pasuk says El HaKodesh Penima, the word Kodesh tells us even the Kodesh, not necessarily the Kodesh Kadashim. The Gemara says V'yomar Kodesh, V'al Yomar Penima, just say Kodesh and not Penima, and again we would know it's referring to the Kodesh and not the Kodesh Kadashim. And the Gemara says, Amar Rava says, Bozeh v'limit al zeh. This word teaches about that word, meaning the fact that it says Penima and that's the Kodesh Kadashim, that tells us that the word Kodesh is not referring to the Kodesh Kadashim. Otherwise, we might have thought that the word Kodesh is referring to the Kodesh Kadashim. And the Gemara continues, Midi dehavi atoshav v'sacher. This is similar to what we find by Toshav and Sacher. Toshav and Sacher refer to Eved Ivri. A Toshav is an Eved Ivri who is Kinyan Olam, who's acquired forever by having his ear pierced. The Sacher is an Eved Ivri that's for 6 years. The Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, Toshav, it says in the Pasuk Toshav, it's talking about the fact that an Eved Ivri is not allowed to eat Shruma. Let's say he's an Eved Ivri of a Kohen. So it says Toshav Zekone Kinyan Olam. That refers to an Eved Ivri who's acquired forever, whose ear was pierced. And Sacher, what does Sacher mean? Zekone Kinyan Shanim. That refers to an Eved Ivri who's Kinyan Shanim, who's acquired for just 6 years. And the Brisa says Yomar Toshav Yal Yomar Sacher. It should say Toshav and not say Sacher. Vani Yomer, and I would say Kanoi Kinyan Olam Eino Ochel. If somebody acquired forever doesn't eat Truma, so Kanoi Kinyan Shanim Lo Kol Shekain, certainly if he's just acquired for 6 years, he certainly will not eat Truma. And so the Brisa says Ilukein Ho Yisi Omer Toshav Zeh Kanoi Kinyan Shanim. But if it only said Toshav, I would think that that refers to a Kinyan Shanim. Aval Kanoi Kinyan Olam Yehei Ochel, but I would think that somebody who's acquired forever, that he does eat Truma. So Ba Sacher V'Limet Al Toshav. The word Sacher teaches us what Toshav means. Shezeh Kanoi Kinyan Olam V'Zeh Kanoi Kinyan Shanim. This one's acquired forever. This one's acquired for a certain number of years. Ve'eno Ochel, and again, he does not eat Truma. And so therefore, that's similar to over here as well. The word Penima tells us that, again, Penima means Kodesh Kadashim, and the word Kodesh means the Kodesh. Amar le Abaya, so Abaya said to him, B'Shalom Mahasam Trei Gufein. I understand over there by the Eved Ivri example, that's two different individuals. V'Afa Gav Dehavali L'Kro L'Michtav Nirtza Lo Yochal. Even though the pasuk could have said Nirtza, then it really would have been clear that it's talking about the Eved Ivri whose ear is pierced, who's an Eved forever. V'idach Asi B'Kal V'Chomer, and then I could have obviously learned the other kind of Eved Ivri who's a 6-year Eved Ivri as a Kal V'Chomer, that certainly he's not going to eat Truma, but still Mil Sadasi B'Kal V'Chomer Tarach V'Kasav L'Kras. Sometimes something which could be learned from a Kal V'Chomer, the pasuk writes it out. So I could understand the argument over there by Toshav and Sacher why both have to be written. Elahacha, but over here talking about Kodesh Penima, Kevon De'ifsol Behechol Lifnai V'Lifnim. My boy, once we already say that it was disqualified by entering the Hechol, the blood entered the Hechol. So then if it goes to the Kodesh Kadashim, any blood that gets to the Kodesh Kadashim already was disqualified through the Hechol. Why is it necessary at all to write Kodesh Kadashim at all? So El Amar Abaya, rather Abaya says, Lo Nitzrucha El Derech Meshupash. The real reason why the pasuk is saying both, the reason why the pasuk is saying Kodesh and Kodesh Kadashim is because sometimes it can enter the Kodesh Kadashim in a roundabout manner, not going through the Kodesh, and so therefore it's saying, again, even Kodesh Kadashim is going to create this disqualification. Amar le Rava said back to him, he said to Abaya, Vo Hava Ksivbe, it uses the word Hava, and again, using the word Hava, that it says in the pasuk Hein lo huva es dama, so that implies that it was brought the normal way. So you can't understand the pasuk in this fashion that it means a roundabout manner. Elama Rava, rather Rava says Kol midi dechashav alel lifnai v'lifnim. Anytime when the person thinks he's going to bring that blood lifnai v'lifnim, he's going to bring it to the Kodesh Kadashim. So then lo mifsal behechol. Then actually it's not going to be disqualified if it's just brought into the hechol. Rashi explains Elama Rava, rather Rava says Liolam da'ayle derech psachim. brought it in the normal manner. V'yashminan kra, and the pasuk is teaching us tehecha dechashav alem mitchilaso lachniso lefnai v'lefnim. If he initially thought to bring it lefnai v'lefnim utchilas havaso lehechal al menas pnim haya, when he first brought it into the hechal, he was thinking kodesh kadashim. Then lo mifsal adamati lefnim. Then it's not disqualified until it actually reaches the kodesh kadashim. V'mechziro lachutz kasher. If he brings it out before it reaches the kodesh kadashim, he brings it out of the hechal, then it actually would be kosher. And we will note over here that the Shinuya Nuscho says that in terms of the initial question, that it should say Kodesh and not say Panima, it shouldn't be Amar Rava. He changes the girsa to Amar Rabba. Rabba offers the initial answer of Bazev V'limit Alzeh. Abaya asks on that and offers his own answer about bringing it to the Kodesh Kadashim in a roundabout manner, Derech Meshupash, and then Rava brings his answer, again, that Rava says if the person intended to bring it Lefnai V'lefnim, it's not going to be disqualified in the Heichal. And the Gemara continues, Boy Rava. Rava asks the following question: Par helam davar shel tzibor useir avodas kochavim. The par helam davar shel tzibor, that's the bull brought for the communal sin, and the sir avodas kochavim, the he-goat brought for the communal sin of avodah zara. There, the blood is supposed to be brought into the heichal. So there, shehichnes daman lifnai v'lifnim. What if the blood was brought into the kodesh kadashim where it's not supposed to be brought? Mahu, what would be the halacha there? Would that be a disqualification? Mi amrinan ala kodesh penima. Do we say the pasuk says ala kodesh penima, which we understand to mean kol hecha de karinan el hakodesh karinan le penima? In a situation where bringing it to the kodesh is a problem, then bringing it to the kodesh kadashim is a problem. But kol hecha de lo karinan el hakodesh. But if it's not a problem to bring it to the kodesh, lo karinan penima, then we don't say that the penima, we don't say that the kodesh kadashim is a problem. In which case, bringing the blood lefnai v'lefnim by the par helam davar shel tzibur and the sor avodas kochavim would not be a disqualification. Oh, deal more maybe shelo b'mekomonu. If you bring it into the kodesh kadashim, it's not the right place, and therefore it is a disqualification. Now, if you're going to say that it's the wrong place and therefore it's disqualified, what about the par v'sar shel Yom HaKippurim? What about the bull and the he-goat of Yom Kippur, where it's supposed to be brought into the Kodesh Kadashim? Shehiza midaman al habadim, and he did what he was supposed to do. He sprinkled from their blood on the badim, that's the badim of the aron, v'hotzion lahechol, and then he brought them out to the hechol, and then v'hichnisan, and then he brought them back into the Kodesh Kadashim. Now he brought them into the Kodesh Kadashim when he really wasn't supposed to. He had already done what he was supposed to do in the Kodesh Kadashim. So now, what's the halacha? Mi'amrinan mekom. Who do we say this is the proper location, so it's not a disqualification? Oh, deal mahol v'nafak nafak, or maybe since he left, so now he left, and now if he goes back in, it is the wrong place, and it is a disqualification. V'im tim solomon, if you're going to say hol v'nafak nafak, since he left, and it's disqualified. What about hiza midaman ala paroches? What if he then sprinkled from their blood on the paroches, the curtain that divides the Kodesh from the Kodesh Kadashim? And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Pei Gimel Amud Aleph.